Hello, everyone. This is Don Milstein, president of H2O Degree. We'll welcome you to our session. It's just about 2 o'clock, and we're starting to have a few more people join as we introduce here. We'll be speaking today from our headquarters in Philadelphia. We also have Jerry Armstrong, our vice president of technical sales and services. He'll be joining me in the presentation. And appreciate everyone giving us some time. And it looks like we're a minute or two after, so why don't we get going, keep everyone on track for I'm sure everyone's got a busy day here. You can see our numbers on that slide. You will get everyone will get this presentation emailed to them when this is over, so feel free to take notes, but you will get this presentation for your view. And again, both of our email addresses are there, and at any time, feel free to reach out. Let's go over just a few quick ground rules real quick. Ultimately, we got a lot of people on the call, so it's best, what we've done is we have about 3 sessions where we'll stop for questions. The whole time, please feel free to send chat questions. We'll monitor those and get those answered as we go through. But every, let's say, 10 slides or so, we'll stop here, review those chat questions, and then we'll open up the microphones if you got a burning question to ask. We do want to make this interactive as best we can. Obviously in this, we'd love to be in person with everybody at their own offices, but that's not what's happening in the world. So these webinars have worked out very well, and hopefully we can get you the information you're looking for. So with that, we'll go ahead and go to the next thing. I just want to give you just a brief introduction into H2O, and then we'll educate on about submetering in general. So the company, basically we fall into 4 categories, right? The first being tenant submetering for billing, and this is where we're actually providing hardware, providing wireless communication. So you as a landlord can bill your tenants both for water, electric, gas, BTUs, runtime, so that whole host. So you can think of us for any type of utility. We can provide that solution to build tenants both in an apartment building, any kind of multi-housing and commercial properties. And when you think about tenant, it's also on the commercial side, you might just be allocating costs to different departments. So just think about getting very granular in water and energy consumption. The other major area is what we call leak detection and diagnostics. And that falls into a couple of categories. This might be a property where it's a market rate, no problem. But a lot of times we see this in affordable housing or student housing where you're actually paying the bills of all the utilities, and you want to go ahead and identify leaks in the toilets, in the showers, in the sinks. You want to identify floods on the floor and have control of that. And really it's about cost savings and damage savings versus reimbursement for expenses. The third area is what we call thermostat controls. Similar type concept. In that area, we're actually going to be putting in thermostats to allow the landlord to control the temperature settings, allow for setbacks. If it becomes vacant, to put it to a different mode. And we see this a lot, again, in affordable and student housing, but also in some of our market rate customers. And overall, it's just energy management, how we're monitoring, how we're giving that information to landlords to make astute decisions on what's going on in their facility. Excuse me. Let's go to the next screen. Our business is really about supporting the property owners, and we're trying to get them those energy savings. We're obviously getting them operating expense reduction, whether it's reducing the expense from savings, leak detection and that kind of thing, or doing the billing on their behalf, or at least providing the equipment so they can do billing with a third party or on their own. And the goal is to change behaviors. Right? One behavior we're trying to change is the tenant's behavior on their usage. If you hold them accountable, they will save. I have a screen that talks about that. We're also trying to change behavior of the maintenance team to be proactive, to go out there and fix leaks, to go out there and fix thermostats when there's a problem. And all this comes down to increasing your net operating income, right? And we've seen these savings, 20, 30% type savings in a property. And as you know, if we can save $100,000 in net operating income, pick whatever, cap rate you want, 5, 7, 8 times, and you're going to have this huge increase, 10 times that savings in your property valuation. So that's really our goal at the end of the day, is to help these properties not only be green and efficient, but increase your net operating income and most importantly, your property valuation. When you look at our installed base, company's been around prior to, late 1990s, early 2000s, but we kind of look at a restart in 2007. And since then, we have well over 110,000 devices installed throughout the country, well over 54,000 apartments. And you can see when we talk about apartments, it's your traditional garden styles, it's high rises, it's 100, 200 unit apartments. We got some properties that have 1,000 apartments in. We work with both the large real estate investment trusts like Aimco, Avalon Bay, Greystar. We work with some of the large family fund private companies like LeFrak, and then all kinds of other housing and commercial properties throughout the U.S. So it gives us a good sense of what's going on. When we talk about multifamily, obviously apartments, market rate, condos, co-ops, we do a fair amount. Mobile homes, student housing is a big area, low income, both Section 8, we've done over 5,000 Section 8 properties through a HUD program. We do a lot of LIHTC properties, right, low income tax credit properties, military housing, and then mixed use. And the key is we don't look at a building strictly for water. That's what we're best known for, but we really look at it, the whole building, holistically, electric, gas, whatever else is going on in that property. So what is sub-meter? The term is sub of a utility meter, right? So it's downstream from that utility meter. So you might have 1 meter from the utility. We call that a master meter, 3-inch meter coming to your property. And now what do? Do you just include water in your rent? Do you allocate it based on number of tenants, number of bathrooms, number of apartments, square footage? All those are a possibility. We call that RUBS, Ratio Utility Billing Systems. Some states it's allowed, some states it's not. Or do you put in a true sub-meter, right? A meter that monitors each apartment for its actual use, to hold that tenant accountable, give them an incentive to conserve. And, if you look at from a market standpoint, you now are able to break out that utility expense from the overall rent. And in a lot of cases, that is very favorable from a market presence and empower really those tenants that they can conserve. On the next screen, what we'll show you is kind of what we're talking about here is, the old model was just included in the rent. Now we got an option. I can either do a true meter or a RUBS program, distribute those bills. And majority of our clients we'll send that billing data to a third-party company. They call it a Read, Bill, and Collect, an RBC. Companies like RealPage, Conservice, NWP, Paylease, those kind of companies. Or you can do it internally, right? We'll send the data to you. We do not provide the billing. We're strictly hardware, but we support. Today, we probably send data on a daily basis to 45 different meter reading and billing companies that are, in general, they are billing about 15 million to 20 million apartments around the world, around the U.S. And obviously some of those are with our meters. So that's the concept, right? How do we get that granular data so you can go and bill these tenants for their actual use, or use the data to analyze what's going on in those properties? When you look at it, there's been a lot of studies that have shown significant savings of billing a tenant for their actual use, right? The National Apartment Association and National Multi-Housing Council have done various studies, and we'll be happy to share those with you. Savings anywhere from 18 to 39%. The EPA did some studies both on multifamily as well as at the university level, seeing savings over 10%. NYSERDA, New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, did a great study showing savings. And this one's one of my favorites. This was related to electric, but you'll see what I'm saying from there. It really helps in that. What it does is that study took a property that had 200 unit apartments, one next to each other. At one point, they were all just included in rent. The next thing they did is they actually went in and put in some meters on building 1, not on building 2, watched it for a year, and they saw savings ranging on an individual tenant from 10% to 26%. So in every case, the tenant used less when they were billed, the overall property benefits. So it's definitely a number you can always point to, and those drive those type of savings of 1 to 3, 1 to 2 years, savings without a doubt when you move it to a submetering situation. All right. So the one thing on the water side, we'll focus a little more on the water side, is what type of plumbing is in this building, and that's what's going to help determine what kind of metering you need. We break it into 3 categories. The first category is called single point of entry, and we'll review this later with the pictures. But basically, that is an apartment that has its own hot water heater in each apartment. One line of water comes in, goes to, tees off to the left to feed the hot water heater, and to the right for the sinks and the toilets and everything else. When you do that, all you need is 1 meter, single point of meter, to monitor all the usage. The second way buildings are built is there's a centrally heated water system, and we're bringing 1 hot line and 1 cold line to each apartment. That's called dual point of entry. In that case, you need 1 hot, 1 cold meter. The third is, again, a property that is centrally heated, but it has what are called risers that are feeding each appliance. So in this case, you might have all the toilets on 1 riser, and all the hot water for the shower on 1 riser and the cold water for another riser. And then we go to the same for the sink in the kitchen and in the vanity. In those cases, what you have to do is you put a point of use meter, a meter at the toilet, at the shower, at the sink, because you can't just put 1 meter for the whole property. So that's our third one, point of use. That is one that is, I'm proud to say H2O degree is without a doubt the leader in point of use meter, and also it helps us do leak detection. So with that, I just want to stop for a second, see if there's any questions on the chat. I think I see one question related to the gift cards. Everyone that has signed up and attended this will get an Uber Eats or a Grubhub type of card mailed to you. It's kind of, we normally do these as a lunch and learn at your property, but can't be there in person, so this is the next best thing. I'll stop for a minute. If anybody's got a question, feel free to take your phone off mute and ask it. If not, we'll turn it over to Jerry for the next section.
Hey, Don, it's Susie. If everyone can just check the chat, there's a few people that I just need your choice for gift cards. So if you can just keep an eye on your chat to see if you get a bubble from me.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Susie.
Thanks.
All right. With that, Jerry, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next section. I believe that's where we said you'd switch.
Pass the baton, huh? All right. Well, everyone, thanks again for taking the time out of your day to spend a little educational session with us and learn about metering. So, Don went through a couple different variations of how plumbing systems are designed in buildings. We heard about point of entry, the 2 different types there. So, with point of entry, you have what he described, a single point of entry being a single domestic cold water supply into an apartment unit. Typically, those apartment units then have a water heater inside of it, and the hot water is generated in each apartment unit, right? So you can capture all water consumed inside of that unit with just 1 meter. And most importantly is that there's an isolation valve. So that isolation valve or shutoff valve will turn off water to just that apartment, right? Because we want to make sure that, the water being consumed and measured is in those 4 walls of that unit particularly. Now, in a dual point of entry type system, you have a centrally domestic hot water system. It's a boiler system that's going to feed lots of different buildings, lots of different apartments, and you have 1 hot and 1 cold water line ran to each apartment unit. Again, a set of isolation valves, 1 for hot, 1 for cold, and you'll be able to measure all hot water individually and all cold water individually. Now, one important thing that is possible in states where it's legal is that if you are measuring individual hot water, you would be able to capture the individual energy that the building used to produce that hot water. And what do I mean by that? So if you have a central domestic hot water system and you have a boiler and you're producing all hot water for all apartments, it takes energy to produce that hot water. Now, if you wanted to put a meter onto that central domestic hot water system, you can go ahead and use the hot water meters as a proxy. So if you have 10 apartments and all 10 apartments, you add the sum of all hot water gallons used in that building. Let's say it's 1,000 gallons of hot water. Each one of those apartments use 100 gallons of water. Now, you could take 10% of the energy measured at the central domestic hot water system, and you can go ahead and then charge the individual energy for that hot water to the resident, right? Because they consumed 10% of the overall hot water energy. So it's also something that is of interest to ownership groups, design individuals, because, if we're trying to encapsulate an entire cost recovery system for submetering, that's one area that is going to be very important, right? Because it's going to be a huge expense incurred to generate that hot water, no matter the size of the development. Here's some examples of point of entry water submeters. These are kind of your standard typical water meters that you would see every day, either installed at your house, maybe in the basement. But if you see here, you have two examples. The one on the left there is a cold water meter. That water meter could be installed horizontally, vertically, at an angle, just because of the way the meter is manufactured, and you can move the head. The meter in the middle with a red ring around it to make it easy for installers. Red means hot. That's going to be your hot water meter. And the meter on to the right, that's your brass water meter. Typically, those water meters are used in what we have as commercial spaces or mixed-use spaces. They're going to be kind of your larger size. The thing that all three of these meters share is a pulse output. And what is a pulse output? The pulse output is a way that the water meter can communicate to our wireless radio. So this pulse output that the water meter would generate equals some sort of gallon, right? Some sort of ratio. So one pulse on these water meters could equal, one pulse equals 1 gallon. One pulse equals 10 gallons or 100 gallons, depending on the size of the water meter. So when that information gets fed into our radio that you see as an example here at the bottom of the screen, we capture that and we report that to the gateway that would be there located at the site, connected to the internet. And that's what's forwarding us the information. So then when we grab it, we interpret that and we say, oh, okay, well, in the last hour, there's been 5 pulses from this water meter into the radio. So it consumed 5 gallons. And so that's how we're seeing usages. That's how we're able to provide analytics every hour, whether there's, leaks, continuous flowing water, those kind of things. Previously, we talked about point of use submetering. This is the example where you have no individual shut-offs to turn off the water to just one single apartment. This is where you have risers that are inside a building. These risers are in stacked fashions. You have kitchens that are on top of each other. You have bathrooms that are on top of each other. And so you have hot and cold water lines running up to feed all the kitchens. And you have hot and cold water lines running up to feed all the individual bathrooms. So there, your only shutoffs are really at the individual fixtures. And so H2O Degree, we are the leader in point of use submetering. So we have options that you're going to be able to put individual meters on a myriad of different fixtures and or appliances. We make lots of different plumbing assemblies to accommodate those. And you can see some of the examples there onto the right-hand side. Here's an example of a plumbing assembly with a meter attached to the bottom of a toilet. You can see that it looks as though it's sticking out from the side, but it's a very small unit. When it's installed onto an individual toilet, it kind of blends in. It gets hidden. It's really out of sight and out of mind. Another example would be underneath the lavatory sink that you have here. And also, the meter is small enough to fit in a escutcheon behind the shower head. That's an example as if you weren't able to get behind the shower to what's called the mixing valve, right, where hot and cold water go up to the mixing valve and either come out the tub spout or come out the shower head. And to gather total water consumption inside of an apartment unit, one of the biggest fixtures that's always important to capture is the toilet. In an apartment, a toilet consumes 40% of the overall water consumed inside of an apartment unit, inside your home, right? So toilets are always number one on the list. Next, it's going to be tub and shower, right? So with those 2 points, you're already capturing 80% of the overall water consumed in a unit, right? So the rest, we can either estimate or allocate to common area use, or we can go ahead and figure out what is going to be the next point that you want to capture. And most typically, it's going to be your kitchen hot, so that's your next highest consuming fixture. But again, you can average it in 2-3 meters in a point of use application, and you're capturing 80 to 90% of the water in an apartment unit. So it's a cost-effective solution without having to replumb buildings. So it's something very interesting to take in consideration. Here's a breakdown of what that point of use meter looks like and what it's providing. So you see here, here's an exploded view of the individual point of use meter itself. You have the radio board inside. You have the lithium battery that's providing hourly data and 5 years of life, typical 5 years warranty life, and typical 7. And it's paired with what we call the flow sensor. So these 2 components make up the point of use meter in itself. And this point of use meter provides us gallons, right? So it provides us a total odometer of gallons consumed, or that's ran through the meter, temperature of the water, because if we're installed on a domestic hot water system, we want to know that hot water is actually getting delivered, flow time, and an event. So an event is important when we couple that with flow time and gallons when we're doing leak detection. An event is a stop and start of the water. So there we're able to see individual fixtures signatures, right? So what is a signature? We can see, small flapper leaks, right? Where, water is seeping through the flapper in a toilet and the tank is just constantly flowing, or a stuck chain where the water is constantly flowing and hung up, or small drips in a faucet. So we're able to see that in a very granular level because of this meter in itself. We gave you the example of the point of entry water meters, right? So it's 1 pulse per 1 gallon, right? And that's pretty much as granular as those meters could get. Now, in this example, the point of use meter provides 2,000 pulses per gallon. So we're able to see and capture much more granular data, and that way provide you with actionable data where you can go ahead and derive the most efficiency out of the unit, out of maintenance staff, by giving them the reports, and also tenants, right? So that way everybody's on the same page and we know how much water we're consuming. Here's some just examples of what that point of use meter looks like as it's installed on individual fixtures. Again, you can see it here in the upper left, installed in the toilet, underneath the lavatory sink. Here's an example of the shower head tub spout. Here's the meter hidden behind that escutcheon. And then just an exploded view of what that flow sensor meter and the security clip that pairs those 2 together while it's installed. This is an interesting graph with lots of the data that we've been able to collect over the years. Again, we'll reiterate that the toilet, you can see here, a little over 40% of the overall water consumed in that apartment unit is at the toilet. Next, we have shower and tub, making up another 35 to 40%. And the rest is 5% or under for the other fixtures, being kitchen sink hot, kitchen sink cold, and lavatory sinks, right? So by really having those 2 to 3 meters installed in the toilet and shower tub, we're capturing the majority of the water consumed in that apartment unit. And, if we have point of use projects, we like to give lots of different options. So that way we're seeing what the most cost-effective solution is to meter an apartment that's in a point of use type configuration. Here's just a breakdown of what your individual toilet looks like with its internal components. You have the standard flapper here, the fill valve, the handle, and notorious chain. And again, leaks that are happening at a multi-unit property, 70% of them are attributed to leaking toilets. So at any point, we could go to any sort of multifamily property and we could go ahead and, I'd be willing to bet that there's some toilets on that property that are leaking. We've never seen a multifamily property not have leaks when they have especially standardized toilets with flappers. With our system, we're able to provide daily leak detection reports. And those daily leak detection reports can go out to lots of different stakeholders. We can have as many people subscribe to these reports as a customer wants. We also provide it in a web portal view, and we give you a hit list, right? We highlight the issues that we're finding across a property. We're telling you the individual building, apartment, and even down to the fixture level with the serial number of the meter, where we're seeing the issues, right? So an interesting little graph here is at a property that we've had installed for a number of years. Starting in 2013, you could see here in the dark blue line, here's the domestic cold water usage per month and the domestic hot water usage per month. You can see here that the light blue line for domestic hot water is pretty flat. It doesn't fluctuate too much, right? So what does that tell us? There's not too many leaks that are happening on the domestic hot water system, right? So, that's actual consumption. Now, the dark blue line, that's domestic cold. And, toilets are hooked up to the domestic cold water system, and we know that toilets leak. So this property started out in 2013 using 750,000 gallons of water a month just for domestic cold water in units. Now, across 3 years, we were able to drop that property just about 50% in their domestic cold water usage. Now, that's coupled with being able to send daily reports to property managers and maintenance staff to address the issues that we're finding on the site, along with implementing a sub-metering program and having individual residents engaged by having, in their own bills, paying for their own water usage. So they're going to curb their own bad habits. They're going to make it known when they see issues at a fixture, running toilets, right? And they're going to get the same alerts that maintenance could get at the same time if they had their own account. So again, everybody's acting as a team, right, to drop the overall water consumption at an individual property. So it's pretty powerful when you see this large consumption drop. So that's daily leak reports, but an instantaneous leak report is when we're finding an issue at a property that is, unbelievably, catastrophic, right? This is where we have maybe a meter that's on a toilet, and this toilet's constantly running, and it's running for 60 minutes, and it's used 100 gallons in the last hour, and it's still running, and we're getting to the next hour. We're going to go ahead and send an immediate alert out, right? Whether that's going to be an email or text message. So we want you to be able to find those issues right then and right there, because if we don't address it sooner rather than later, right, it could cause damage at the property, right? We could have stopped toilets, we could have water running out of the toilet and onto the floor. So these are issues that should be addressed now and not wait until the next day. So what is, a toilet event? What does an average toilet event look like? Because we know that an event is a stop and start. So what do we think is normal? 10 events is normal day, 10 stops and starts, right? 20 events, maybe we visited the bathroom a couple extra times. We had a bad burrito the night before. But what's 100 events, right? With little usage each time. That's where you're having that water seep through the flapper, the toilet tank refill constantly over, dump, over dump, right? Lots of little uses, quarter a gallon at a time. 2 events with constant water flow. You know, maybe that's where you have the stuck chain, water's constantly flowing. You have a cracked fill valve, water's constantly pouring into the tank and going into the overflow tube. Residents don't report it if they, you know, they don't really care, right? So, you know, it's our job to report on those things and make you aware of them as they happen. So we've been talking a little bit about leak detection, but that's leak detection as water's flowing through a meter and typically down the drain, right? So what is it that we can do with flood detection, other types of leak detection? Water that's ending up on the floor in places that it shouldn't be. Well, we've released a set of wireless sensors that could be deployed inside of apartment units, inside common area spaces or mechanical rooms. And this is an example of one of those sensors. So this sensor is battery powered. It is wireless. It has full autonomy. And you can set out these little ears on this sensor and cover a wide area for finding water that ends up on the floor. So in an apartment, what kind of areas would we look at putting this type of sensor? If it was a single point of entry type apartment, maybe we put one of those sensors near the water heater, because we know that you know, temperature and pressure relief valves sometimes leak and end up pouring water onto the floor. Or the vessel inside the water heater starts to rust out and starts to leak. So that's one area. Another area is washer and dryer. So we've seen plenty of times where washing machine hoses have, you know, busted, have crippled, have leaked. You know, the base of the washing machine starts to leak. So those are areas where, you know, we can let you know that, hey, we're seeing water that's ending up on this floor. As soon as a sensor senses water on the floor, we send an immediate message, an email, or, you know, possibly text to say, this is an issue and you need to go fix this now. This sensor is located in, you know, apartment 101, and it's sensing water at the water heater, right? So very, very protective you know, device that could be used for asset protection. This is another example of the water on the floor sensor, a flood sensor. This is a rope sensor. As you can see here, it has 2 ends, so this conductive rope is extendable. So this is a sensor that you could put into a soffitted area, into a mechanical room. You can cover the perimeter of an area. So again, you know, another versatile type sensor that you can place in different areas other than the previous sensor with the 2 ears. And so, you know, what can we do with those sensors that are detecting water that's on the floor? It would be helpful if we could turn off water at that time, right? Because if we're sensing water on the floor, it typically shouldn't be there. So now we have an option where we have remote shutoff valves. So this remote shutoff valve could be installed onto, you know, the water heater itself, onto the washing machine, onto the cold water entry into an apartment unit, onto the hot water entry into an apartment unit, or even a riser, right? So we can detect water that's on the floor, and we can pair those sensors to a particular valve. So if we have a water on the floor sensor installed in apartment 101, and it's measuring or sensing water at the water heater, and we have one of these wireless valves also installed in that apartment, what happens is the sensor on the floor will send a wireless signal and tell the valve to close the water. And then we're sending an email or text message to the property manager, maintenance staff to say, hey, we sensed water in apartment 101 and we shut the water off in apartment 101, right? And gives you the option to say, you know, hey, I was expecting it, I wasn't expecting it, through our app or text messages. So now we're really getting into the area where we can provide protection for these apartment units, for equipment that may be installed. Here's a little closer up view of what that wireless valve looks like. The valve in itself is also battery powered. It has an ultra low power consumption. So these valves are made to actuate 4 times a month, and per that number of actuations, we're able to get 10 plus years out of this valve and the battery installed into it. We can do time control operation. We can do tamper detection if a resident wanted to futz around with the valve or anything like that. So, this valve is very unique in the sense where if you look at other valves that may be on the market, they're catered to single family homes, right? They're connecting to Wi-Fi. This type of valve is enterprise level, where we're able to see and control, hundreds of valves on our platform, and, always give you the control and diagnostics that you guys would be able to see, what's exactly going on at this property. The valve in itself comes in lots of different sizes. Currently, we offer sizes 3/8 to 3 inch. There could be sizes that are available in the future past 3 inch, but as of right now, these are our current offerings. And honestly, these are sizes that would cater to most, multi-unit buildings, most commercial spaces. So very interesting here. Here's an example of what the app looks like. As you can see here, we're telling you individual status of the valve in itself. We give you the option to remotely open or close the valve. We tell you the current status, the battery voltage. We give you the temperature, the ambient air temperature that the valve may be living in, because maybe this is in a crawl space and, it's an unconditioned space and it's, getting below freezing. That's an area that we can alert on. We also give you the option to put the valve into a maintenance mode. Maybe it's possible where you're doing work inside of an apartment unit and you're having to, flush the system out. And if you're trying to flush the system out, you don't want the valve to close haphazardly while you're doing work or having a contractor or maintenance staff do the work. So you can go ahead and tell the valve, hey, I'm going to be doing something, go into maintenance mode for, the next hour, next 2 hours. And that's all configurable within the app in itself. Here's another, example, closer up view of those individual statuses that you can see on the valve itself. There's the maintenance mode. It's just a quick little button that you can click in the valve app itself. And at this point, we can take a little break and see if there's any questions. I think there's a few here in chat.
Yeah, I have a few questions, Jerry. I saw. One question was on point of use metering, and not exactly sure the question, but the point is that not only can we, let's say, get the toilet, shower, sink individually, but typically what happens, we'll combine that, and that is what can then go as a combined number for billing. So you can do it individually, see the usage, as well as the combined value, which is really where everyone wants to go from a billing standpoint. Another question was around lease language. If you're going to a property that either new or retrofit and now you're going to start billing, is there lease language? So we don't provide that. We can obviously get you some examples, and we'll talk offline with Lou who asked that. But there's also an association called the UMCA, Utility Management and Conservation Association, UMCA. And it's a national association made up of 30, 40 of the leading meter reading and billing companies, as well as manufacturers like ourselves and installers. And it's really the industry voice that tracks regulation for submetering, what's allowed, what's not allowed. It also tracks for electric, gas, water, it really doesn't matter. And also describes best practices. We're members of that association, and to be honest, I'm also chairman of the association, so I think it's a good group. But without that said, feel free to contact them, go to their website, and there's some information about, kind of sample language also there. Another question we had is, have you worked with companies like WegoWise? And there's, several companies we've worked with, WegoWise, which was purchased by Appfolio. The same as, I guess, some of the other companies that not only look for, they really don't do billing as much as they're helping you do energy analysis, do Energy Star, if you're affordable housing or some other type of property where you have to report that. And we can feed our data into them just the same. And we do that with a lot of companies around the country. You know, again, it's data to us, and we can feed it in several formats to companies that will take that data and do analytical work for you. So yes, we have worked with them. Another question was about pricing, and that's something that we definitely want to discuss. Let's back up for half a second on that. One is, if you think about a typical apartment, you know, you got to think of a meter as being, you know, roughly about meter, wireless communication, all the plumbing infrastructure, all that hardware-wise might be around $200 a point. If it's a dual point of entry, maybe it's not quite 400, a little less. And if it's a point of use, maybe you're in there for $400 or $500, give or take. What we typically see is the real question is, what's the payback, right? So sub-metering, where you didn't bill before, now you're billing all day long. That's, you know, 1 year type payback for 1 or 2 dual point entry type of situation. If it's a point of use, it might be 2 to 3 years. If we're doing leak detection, it's probably closer to 2 to 3 years. It depends how ugly your property is as far as leaks. And there's several ways that we can help you analyze that ahead of time. When you look at the flood detection, you know, those sensors kind of range from $75 to $100, and then a shutoff valve might be, you know, altogether the whole package, couple sensors and a shutoff valve is going to be under, you know, well under $1,000 per apartment, and it's just a pain. And we've actually seen some insurance companies starting to offer rebates for what they call a, you know, internet-enabled flood detection system, and they might get 5 to 10% off their bill. At the same time, there are some insurance companies that says, unless you have that type of system, we're not going to insure you. So there's a lot going on in that area. Hopefully that gives you a little help. I did see there's 2 other questions real quick. When you talk about other meters besides our meters, we're going to talk about just our wireless device, wireless radio that takes that pulse input. We offer a whole host of meters, right? Neptune meters, Badger meters, you know, you name it around the country. We resell those, as well as if you already have those meters. All those meters typically have a pulse output, right, that we can tie into. So we really, to date, have not met a meter we can't talk to. So we either resell them, or we'll just offer the ability to connect with them. And again, similar, there's another question about ResMan, which is a, you know, part of that, I guess, property management overall. Same with the Yardi systems, the RealPage systems. We can send data to all of them. We do that today, integrate it into them. And we've actually had a few of our clients have not only gotten our meter billing data into their property management software for tenant billing, but on the leak detection have also integrated that in as far as trip tickets or, you know, problem issues that have to be dealt with. So we have a lot of experience there. Any other questions? You can open up your mic if you're more comfortable that way. If not, we'll continue on. But, you know, love the questions and appreciate it. All right. Why don't we go ahead to the next slide there, Jerry? Okay, so, you know, I just want to give a high level on the wireless side of this business, because it is important to understand it. Today, we're using one of the latest, greatest long-range wireless. It's called LoRaWAN. This is, not that it matters, it's a 900 megahertz system, but the key is we put one gateway in the center of the property, and we can go 1,000 feet in a garden style, any direction, without any kind of repeaters. That's a 70-acre property, and we'll show you some examples of that. The other way is to put them in a high-rise, and we can put in a gateway on the, let's say, the 15th floor and go 15 stories above, 15 stories below, 30 stories with just one gateway, no repeaters. And that's important because the meters are one thing, but you got to be able to communicate with them all the time, consistently connected. And this LoRaWAN has been wonderful. Prior to that, we used a Zigbee wireless mesh, which was an excellent solution, and 100,000 devices on that. But with this new technology, it really helps eliminate not only the repeaters, but where they go and, you know, other points for ease of construction and ease of designing the project. We're now well over, I think we're closer to 7,000 of these devices out in the field and 60 properties, so good solid equipment. What I'm going to show you just kind of on the next slide is, you know, really what it would look like is you can imagine in an apartment building, it's just showing a high rise, could just as easily be garden style. Let's say you have a hot and cold meter in each apartment. We're going to bring those pulse outputs from those meters into our pulse counter that has a radio. That radio lasts 10 years, easy to be replaced. You know, a lot of property owners hope they're going to flip that building in 10 years. So might not have to worry about the next guy's issue, but they can be replaced easily, like all of our meters. And those pulse counters talk directly down to the gateway. Okay. Once it's in that bottom left-hand corner, most of the time that's in a property manager's office or a utility room somewhere in the building. At that point, we need internet access. We want to be on your network. We don't want to have our own line brought in, because if your network goes down and your employees can't do their daily work or can't check fantasy football scores or Facebook, they're going to yell. And we want to be on that same network. If there's not internet access, or you don't want us to be on that network because you have IT groups that are a pain in the neck, or it's affordable housing is really not internet, then we can go to a cell modem. All that means is, you know, someone's got to bear a $30 a month type of cost. But once that data is collected, we're constantly communicating it to our server in the cloud, the H2O Degree server. At that point, the data is evaluated and sent right back to the property manager. It can be sent to the CFO, the accounting department, to the meter reading companies, which is a lot of the data goes. You could give access to the tenants if you want. Very few of our property managers do that. They just know that's more questions, but it is an opportunity to do that. So that just gives you a high-level view of how the system works from a wireless. And on the next slide, what you're going to see is kind of the components that go into that. You know, on the right side is the gateway. It's roughly 8.5 by 11, almost a sheet of paper. Sits off the wall about an inch or two, and you know that's got a power supply and it's got to be plugged in with internet. And then it goes to those little pulse counters or our little wireless meters on each toilet, and they all talk back into one system. So very simple. You know, our company can lay all that out for you. We can review the plans. If you have plans for new construction or retrofit, we have people that can go visit the sites. There's lots of ways to lay it out. And when it's time from an installation standpoint, the installer knows exactly what pieces they need, where they go, and all that work is just part of our upfront. You know, we do that for free. It's part of our service. So with that, we're going to switch to thermostat controls, and we'll have, you know, time for questions, you know, later. But on the thermostat side, you know, it's really about how do you help tenants not waste electricity or gas or whatever the means of heating and air conditioning. And we want to really dial in, can we keep 72 degrees locked in? And you know that for every degree you can save, it's over 2% off your electric bill or gas bill. So if all your tenants are normally running at 74 and being comfortable at 72, that's a big saving. So that's what our system is about. It's about putting in these thermostats, giving the tenants the ability to go up and down, but the landlord can set parameters. That thermostat never goes above 76 and never goes below 68 degrees. 10 o'clock at night, you can do a setback. So if they want more heat at night, they have to get out of bed to do it. Okay, that's fine. But you do give them that availability. But at the same time, you want to be able to control it when a tenant's not there. You put it to vacant mode, okay? It's a big deal in these apartments, vacancies, right? What normally happens if a tenant moves out in August, first thing that happens, maintenance person walks up there with a bucket of paint and a set of keys, goes into the apartment, puts the temperature to 68 degrees, paints the apartment, and leaves. Now that apartment is running at 68 degrees until it gets rented. No need for that. We put it to vacant mode. It probably only goes down to 72 and only for 2 hours. Then it has to be pushed back. If not, it's going back up to 75 or something like that. This also helps us understand, well, if you look on the next slide, we can see the temperature in the apartment, what's going on, and do alarming, similar to like we do leak detection. We can do alarming based on anomaly and report that out. So if all of a sudden it's, 85 degrees outside, the apartment's been calling for air conditioning at 72 all day long, and it never gets below 78 degrees, it means the air conditioning's not working. The opposite's true. It's 32 degrees outside, calling for heat all day long. It never gets above 50, 60 degrees. You got a problem. And then we have the other side where it's 35 degrees outside, calling for heat, up to 72 degrees. The apartment reads 85. Well, that means we have an external heat source. Right? We got a space heater, we got a kerosene heater. And that could be a violation of the lease, it could be an issue. But either way, you're not only controlling the air conditioning, but you're getting these kind of maintenance protection type of things built into it. So that's on the thermostat side. We can do all kind of air conditioning and heating. We do fan coils. Here we got to actually control the valves, turn them on and off. Hot water, heating system. So a lot you can look at. There's really nothing we can't do from a heating and air conditioning. We've even worked with, you name it, types of heating and air conditioning throughout the properties. And to the next slide. You can go one more. Sorry about that. The other piece I want to talk about are the different types of meters we tie into. We mentioned that we sell our own water meters. We also resell other people's pulse output meters. We can do BTU metering if you want to just monitor in a fan coil system what's going on there. We have gas meters. We can do runtime, strictly looking at a centrally heated water system or heating system for gas. And now we allocate that gas charge based on the runtime from the thermostat. We have a whole host of electric meters. And this is interesting where you could put in you see where in the center there it says flush mount meter. So that might be a meter going in each apartment if the electric panel is in the apartment. But if maybe there's a central area where there's an electric closet on the hallway, and you can get at that section and meter going into each apartment. So there we use a multi-point meter, the green one to the right. That's a lot better because now you're not in each apartment and you got a lower cost of installation. We've even done socket meters. You might have taken over a property that was built by each utility, and now it's become a condo. And you can now go in there and replace those socket meters and talk wirelessly. So a whole range, and that's something I always wanted everyone to think about is water kind of is the big thing everyone thinks about, but don't disregard electric and gas. And you see that last button, bullet says Modbus integration to BAS, Building Automation System. That's typically in your larger properties or bigger buildings. We can not only feed the data for billing, but we can also take it into a building automation system and help them have energy data, water, electric, gas, to make better decisions on the operation of building, when to bring the air conditioning on in central plant. Is there any kind of security issues, those type of things. So the next section is, I just want to kind of review a couple properties that really gives you a feel. This one's a little bit unique. This is, a property, 800 acres. It's over 200 units of either single family homes or townhouse communities. Some are single point of entry, some are dual point of entry. We have water meters, electric meters, and we're using that LoRa wireless system to communicate that entire property. And they're now moving into doing some shut-off valve and monitoring for leaks and that kind of thing. Because a lot of these homes are vacation homes, and people aren't there all the time. And if there's a leak, it's devastating because it'll just run and run. So they've really jumped from just metering for billing to now getting into leak and flood detection. That's in upstate New York. Next property is LaFrac City. This is one of our larger customers. They're in throughout New York. The one property itself, called LaFrac City, is over 4,600 apartment units, 20 buildings, 20 stories each. And again, we're doing a mix of point of use metering, right? We're doing meters on toilets and some on the showers and the sinks and bringing all that data back. Right? 18,000 meters worth of data is coming back into our system, both for billing as well as leak detection. And what's nice about this was a property in New York City, which went from not billing tenants to billing tenants. So they're starting to see that savings. And as the leases turn, they're saying, congratulations, your lease is up. Here's your new lease, and here's your bill for water. And the tenants are very willing to do that because they don't want to move. But they've also done a lot of new construction in Jersey City and Hoboken, big high rises with us. They took over a hotel in Midtown Manhattan and turned that into an apartment and condo. So it's a good success story where they've used it for retrofit, new construction, renovation, and the like. Next property is in San Diego. This is a traditional, brand new high-rise building, beautiful building, over 24 stories, a couple hundred apartments in there. It's a dual point of entry. And, literally there's one or two gateways in there running that whole building. And this was using the dual point of entry into our pulse scanner. And this is unique because California has a program called Senate Bill 7 that says starting January 1st, 2018, all new construction multifamily over 4 units must sub-meter. You can no longer include it in rent. You no longer can do a cost allocation through RUBS. You must sub-meter the property. And, California identified during its water shortages over the last X number of years that, 20, 30% of the population lives in apartments that might not be built. And they see this as a great water conservation effort. And it's been readily adopted by the property managers out there. And I think this is something you're going to see moving across. It already happened in Atlanta and certain other markets, but I think that's going to be the trend that new construction will be required. And here's a property, typical garden style, 2-3 stories throughout a 30-acre property, one gateway in the clubhouse, covers the whole property. This has a hot water heater in each apartment. So we have one single meter monitoring it, again, back to the gateway. So pretty traditional high rise you saw. Now you're seeing traditional garden style. And with that, I want to see if we have any other, we can keep going because we're getting to the end here. See if we have any other chat questions and open up the phones. Again, here's our information if anyone's got, wants to reach us afterwards. Any questions from anybody? Hopefully you found this educational and, gave you some thought process, right? And look, this is a big industry. We know everyone. We're happy to help you get in touch with, obviously, our products. If you need references for other companies, no problem. I mean, we take seriously educating. If you want to work with rebill and collect companies or property management software, be happy to tell you how we tie in or point you in the right direction. Please do not be shy in asking for our help. We've been in this industry. H2O Degree has been in it since the late 90s. I personally been in it since 1991. So there's probably nobody between Jerry and I and the rest of our team we don't know, and be happy to reference as you can. All right. Looks like Jerry doing a little shopping there. So with that, hopefully everyone gets their, you sign up for your gift cards. You'll get this presentation sent to you by Susie Abbott, our head of marketing. And, we'll stay on the line a couple of minutes as people sign off. If you have any questions, feel free to either send them by chat or just unmute your phone. Thank you very much for your time.